So Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have this whole thing that has quietly turned into something way messier than what we were originally sold. At first, it was simple, right? Two people stepping away from royal pressure, choosing peace, choosing privacy. That is what everyone believed. But now it does not feel that clean anymore. There are just too many little things that do not fully add up, and people are starting to notice. And I am not even talking about random internet theories. This is stuff that is being picked apart by people who have spent years digging into powerful figures. One of the biggest names here is Tom Bower. Now, whether you like him or not, the guy does not just throw opinions around for fun. He builds arguments. He looks for patterns. And when he started focusing on Harry and Meghan, people paid attention. Before we dive in, hit subscribe. We are pretty loud and we love you. What caught Tom Bower's interest was not just their public drama. It was the way their story has been managed from the start, especially when you go back to Archie's birth, because that is where things get a little strange. So here is what happened. The palace told the public that Meghan Markle had gone into labour in the afternoon. Big moment, excitement everywhere, but then just hours later, it comes out that Archie was actually born early that morning. That is not a small mix-up. That is an 8-hour gap. And honestly, it is the kind of thing that makes you pause. Like, why say labour just started when the baby was already born? That is not about privacy. That is about controlling the narrative. And this is where people like Tom Bower start asking deeper questions. Because royal births are not casual events. They follow strict traditions. There are official doctors involved. There are signatures. There is documentation. It is all done to make sure everything is clear, especially because it ties into the line of succession. But with Archie, a lot of that normal process just was not there. And that is where the body of the rule comes in. It sounds old school, but it is actually important in royal terms. Basically, it means the child has to be physically born by the mother to be eligible in the line. It is a legal thing, not just tradition. So when records are unclear or missing, it naturally creates questions. Now look, I am not saying anything wild here, but when basic details are not transparent, people will fill in the gaps themselves. That is just how it works. And honestly, Harry and Meghan Markle did not help themselves by staying so closed off. Then you move forward to how we actually see their kids. Compare it to Prince William and Kate's children, George, Charlotte, Louis. They are out there. You see them at events with their family just living normal royal life. It feels natural. With Archie and Lilibet, it is completely different. The photos are rare, controlled, sometimes not even showing their faces clearly. It feels more like a brand rollout than family moments. And I get wanting privacy. I really do. But when it is this controlled, it starts to feel less like protection and more like strategy. And that is where things shift from they want peace to they are managing perception very carefully. At the same time, their life in California is not exactly low-key either. That Montecito lifestyle, it is expensive, huge house, security, travel, it adds up fast. And yeah, they had big deals at the start. Netflix, Spotify, the book. But not everything went smoothly. Spotify dropped them. And not quietly either. That whole grifter comment from Bill Simmons, that was rough. Netflix still has pressure on them to produce. So now it feels like Meghan Markle and Prince Harry are in this position where they have to keep people interested. And let us be honest, a lot of that interest comes from their connection to the royal family, which puts Harry in a weird spot. He left to escape all that attention, but now he kind of needs it. And from what is being said, it is affecting him. He is not the same relaxed guy people used to see. There is talk about him being constantly online, reading everything, getting pulled into the noise, and that is the irony. The guy who wanted distance from media pressure is now surrounded by it in a completely different way. And when you look at how they have been handling the pressure, Meghan Markle seems to be taking a very different approach compared to Prince Harry. From what is being reported, whenever things start getting loud, especially around topics like the kids or the birth details, the move is not to explain, it is to shut it down. Legal notices, warnings, pressure. And yeah, that might work short term, but honestly, in situations like this, it can backfire. Because when people do not get answers, They do not just forget, they get more curious. And when the response is legal action instead of clarity, it starts looking like there is something worth hiding. Even if there is not, that is the tricky part. Perception starts running ahead of reality. And I keep thinking about this. If everything was completely straightforward, would it not be easier to just show it? One normal, unfiltered moment with King Charles and the kids, one clear timeline, and a lot of this noise would disappear overnight. But that has not happened, and the longer it does not, the more the story grows. Then there is Harry's inner circle. This part is actually kind of sad if you really think about it. Back in the UK, he had his military friends, people who knew him before all of this, people who kept him grounded. But now, that circle looks completely different. It is mostly PR teams, advisors, media people, and celebrity connections. And those relationships are not the same. They are tied to work, to image, to strategy. It is not the kind of support system you rely on when things get messy. And when you lose that original circle, it is easy to end up in a bubble where everyone around you is just reinforcing the same perspective. That is where things can go off track. Because instead of hearing different opinions, you only hear what aligns with your current narrative. And that can slowly disconnect you from how the outside world actually sees things. At the same time, the royal family itself has clearly taken a step back, especially King Charles, and I do not think that is accidental. It feels more like a calculated decision: keep distance, avoid getting pulled into any unresolved questions, and let the situation stay separate from the core of the monarchy. Because from their side, this is not just family drama, it is about stability. The monarchy runs on tradition, structure, and public trust. If there are open questions around something as important as lineage, they are not going to casually step into that conversation without clarity. So what you are seeing now is this invisible line. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are still technically part of it, but at the same time they are also completely outside of it. And that is a strange position to be in. And honestly, the people I feel for the most in all of this are Archie and Lilibet. They did not choose any of this. They are growing up in a very controlled environment, far from the rest of their family, away from cousins, away from the kind of normal interactions that royal kids usually have. It is a very curated life, and maybe that was done out of protection, maybe out of control, I do not know. But either way, it creates distance, and that distance does not just affect the public, it affects family connections too. Because think about it, growing up without those shared experiences, without that sense of belonging to a larger family structure, it can shape how you see everything later on. And now when you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, the whole situation starts feeling less like a clean break for freedom and more like a complicated trade-off. They left one system, but they entered another one that comes with its own pressures. And the more time passes, the harder it becomes to keep everything aligned. And now, when you look at where things are heading, it does not feel like this is slowing down anytime soon. If anything, it's getting more intense because the questions are not coming from random blogs anymore. They are coming from people digging into records, timelines, finances, the kind of stuff that does not just disappear with good PR. Take the whole early Toronto phase of Meghan Markle's life. That is another area people are starting to revisit. Before Prince Harry even entered the picture, she was already moving in very connected circles. Soho House, high-level networking, people who understood influence and media positioning. And when you compare that circle to the people around her now, it is not completely different. A lot of the same types of players are still there. So it makes you wonder, was this whole transition out of royal life actually a sudden decision? Or was it something that had been building for years? Because when you look at how smoothly Meghan Markle and Prince Harry stepped into media deals, production contracts, and brand positioning, it does not feel random. It feels planned. But here is where things get tricky. That plan only works if the public stays interested. And right now, that interest is changing. It is not just curiosity anymore. It is scrutiny. Financially, there is pressure too. Maintaining that Montecito lifestyle is not cheap. And when deals like Spotify fall apart publicly, it affects perception. The Netflix deal is still there, but it comes with expectations. They need to keep delivering something people actually want to watch. And this is where their biggest challenge shows up. If they move away from royal-related content, the attention drops. But if they keep leaning into it, it keeps the drama alive. It is a cycle they cannot really escape from. Then you have the speaking events, the tours, the appearances, the high-ticket engagements. Those are meant to reinforce their image, but the response has not always been what they expected. In places like Australia, the reaction has been more critical than supportive. People are not just listening anymore. They are questioning, what is the value here? What is the transparency behind these events? And when your entire income stream is tied to your reputation, that kind of shift is dangerous. At the same time, inside royal circles, there are quiet conversations happening that we do not fully see. Protocols, rules, legal frameworks, these things do not just vanish because times change. The monarchy still runs on structure, and if there are unresolved questions around documentation or verification, eventually those systems push for answers. That is the part people underestimate. This is not just about headlines, it is about records, history, the kind of details that stay on paper long after public opinion moves on. And right now there are gaps. Whether they are small or significant, they exist. And that is what keeps the story alive. What makes it even more complicated is that silence is not working the way it used to. Earlier, staying quiet could calm things down. Now it does the opposite. Every unanswered question turns into 10 new theories. Every legal pushback adds another layer of curiosity. At some point, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry are going to have to decide what matters more, control or clarity. Because if they continue down this path, the risk is not just public opinion, it is credibility. And once that starts slipping, it is very hard to rebuild. At the same time, the royal family is watching all of this from a distance, not reacting publicly, but definitely paying attention. King Charles, Prince William, they understand what is at stake. And their strategy right now seems pretty clear. Protect the institution first, deal with everything else later. So what you are left with is this strange situation. Harry and Meghan are building their own world, but that world is still tied to the one they left behind. And the tension between those two worlds is not going anywhere. Personally, I think this could have been handled very differently from the start. A little more transparency early on, a little less control over every detail, and a lot of this would not even exist. But now it has reached a point where every move they make is being analysed from 10 different angles. And the truth is, people are not even asking for everything. They just want consistency, something that feels real, not managed. Because at the end of the day, this is not just about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle anymore. It is about trust. And once that starts getting questioned, it becomes the main story no matter how much you try to shift the focus. So now the real question is, do they open things up and clear the air? Or do they keep holding on to control and let the speculation keep growing? Either way, the clock is ticking, and the longer they wait, the harder it gets to rewrite the narrative. And here is the thing about Tom Bower. He understands that narratives have expiration dates. You can only run on a carefully managed image for so long before the cracks start showing. And people like him are patient. They will wait. They will document. They will line up the timeline against the official statements and just let the contradictions sit there. Because eventually, contradictions become the story. And that is exactly where we are now. The contradictions are the story. The 8-hour gap between when Archie was born and when the palace said Meghan Markle went into labour is not going away. The controlled photo releases versus the calls for privacy is not going away. The legal threats instead of clarity is not going away. Each one of these on its own might be manageable, but together they form a pattern. And patterns are what investigators like Tom Bower build careers on. Think about the psychology of it for a second. When someone tells you they want privacy, but then they sit down for a primetime interview with Oprah, what are you supposed to do with that? When they say they want to protect their children, but then they sell a Christmas card photo to the highest bidder, how do you reconcile that? You cannot. It just sits there unresolved. And unresolved stuff makes people uncomfortable. It makes them dig. It makes them ask the next question and the next one. That is the position Prince Harry finds himself in now. He is caught between the life he said he wanted and the life he actually built. And those two things do not match. Meghan Markle, on the other hand, seems more comfortable in the tension. She came from an industry where controlled image is everything, where perception is reality, where you manage the brand first and let the truth catch up later if it needs to. But the royal family does not operate that way, or at least it did not used to. The institution moves slowly, but it moves deliberately. It keeps records, it keeps receipts, and it has been around for centuries, which means it understands something that newcomers often do not. Time is the best fact checker, and right now, time is not on Harry and Meghan's side. Every year that passes without clarity adds another layer of doubt. Every missed opportunity to just show up unscripted with the kids adds another question mark. The public is not stupid. They know when they are being managed. They can feel the difference between a genuine moment and a staged one. And that is the real danger here. It is not that people dislike Meghan Markle or Prince Harry. It is that people do not trust them anymore. And trust, once it is gone, is almost impossible to get back. You can rebrand, you can relaunch, you can hire new PR teams, but you cannot make people unsee what they have already seen. And what they have seen is a pattern of deflection, of legal maneuvering, of carefully curated content that raises more questions than it answers. So now we are left watching this slow motion unraveling, and it is fascinating because it is so unnecessary. All of this could have been avoided. One straightforward statement years ago, one honest conversation about why certain decisions were made, one photo with King Charles and the grandchildren that was not filtered through a PR lens, but that is not the path they chose. They chose control, and control is a funny thing. The tighter you grip it, the more it slips through your fingers. Prince Harry is learning that lesson in real time, and you can see it wearing on him. The man who once seemed so free, so full of life, now looks exhausted. And maybe that is the saddest part of all of this. He left to find freedom, but he just traded one cage for another. The difference is this cage has better weather and a nicer view, but the bars are still there. They are just made of different material now. They are made of contracts, of expectations, of a public image that has to be maintained at all costs. And what about Lilibet and Archie? They are growing up in this. They are absorbing this dynamic, this tension, this constant management of reality. What does that teach a child about authenticity, about family, about trust? Those are the long-term consequences that nobody is really talking about, because we are all so focused on the next headline, the next interview, the next contradiction. But the real story is what is happening behind the gates, in Montecito, in the quiet moments when the cameras are off and the PR team has gone home. That is where the truth lives. And the truth, whatever it is, will eventually come out. It always does. Tom Bower knows that. The royal family knows that. And deep down, I think Prince Harry and Meghan Markle know it too. The only question is whether they will be the ones to tell it, or whether it will be told for them. Because one way or another, this story is getting its ending. And the longer they wait to shape it honestly, the less control they will have over how it is written. That is not a threat. That is just how history works. And history, unlike PR, does not take direction. It just records what happened. And what happened here is still being written. But the ink is running out.